I'm on the road to recovery in Castle Rock, Colorado. Live from Millville, New Jersey, I'm on the road to recovery. We're on the road to recovery in Morgantown, West Virginia at Mountaineer Field. And live in Scranton, Pennsylvania, I'm on the road to recovery. Here I am on the road to recovery from Berlin, Maryland. Hey, from Caseville, Michigan, I'm on the road to recovery. I'm on the road to recovery at Ann Arbor, University of Michigan. We are on the road to recovery in Hollywood, California with the living statue. Yo, he's really living, and if he moves, I'll put $5 in it. On the road to recovery from Hollywood, California with my man, the living statue.
Yeah, my name is Joe Ramirez. You know, I started drinking, I guess you could say I was a late bloomer, but I started drinking around 16. And I'll never forget that when, you know, that first couple drinks, there was a sense of, I guess, feeling kind of really normal, actually feeling really good about myself. And then after high school, you know, just kind of doing it every day. Started using marijuana, so it was, you know, alcohol, marijuana, you know, pretty much, you know, the moment I wake up, the moment, you know, I'd go down to sleep. A girlfriend and I were expecting a child, and I was in a rock band at the time, and it was just kind of wild times, but I figured, you know what, I need to probably do something, you know, more responsible, and that's why I joined the Marine Corps, and just, it's just kind of weird. I ended up being a military police officer, but that didn't mean that I stopped drinking and using. I was just a little bit more careful. And I'll never forget, I was actually a certified breathalyzer operator in North Carolina, and they called me in to do a breathalyzer test, and I would tell them, I can't come in, I've been drinking. And after so many of those excuses, they said, we want you to come in anyway. We have to test people for drinking and driving, because they would bring somebody in to the station. And I will never forget that one of the guys refused to take the test, which we have the right to do that. And when no one was looking, I actually took the test myself. And I think I tested it like a 3.2 or 3.1. It was definitely over 3, and still walking around like nobody's business. And so that sort of was my life in the 8 years that I was in the military, just constantly drinking. And I would use, you know, when I was on leave, that sort of thing. But I had to be careful with that because they would regularly test us. And even one time on leave, I wrecked my mother's car, hit a pole, and the type of luck that I have, when I hit this pole and went into a ditch, the person that actually helped me was an off-duty police officer. So the cops were there, you know, rather quickly, and ended up going to jail. And what's so funny about that was that when I was in jail, everyone thought I was like some sort of celebrity because it was during the first Gulf War. Everyone was just really watching the military and watching what was happening around the world. So when I got arrested, all the police, all the sheriff's people were saying, why'd you arrest this guy? He's a Marine, he's in the military. So that probably should have been my first signal or my first wake-up call, but it definitely wasn't. It got progressively worse. I started a business, a private detective agency, and a security guard company in 1994, before I got out. I started drinking more because I had to cope with the stress of the business. I was drinking on the job, drinking at work, sometimes passing out in the office, and you know, my employees really, you know, we got along very, very well. So they put a towel or like a bib over my shirt so I wouldn't be drooling on myself, that sort of thing. And I'll never forget, my bank account was like a negative $20,000. I was like, how am I going to come up with this money? How am I going to come up with this money? I thought, you know, it would be better, you know, probably be more comfortable, you know, if I wasn't living. But I was dating who's now my wife, and I just couldn't bear the thought of hurting her in that way. So it was like, she was like the only one that was sort of, you know, keeping me, or at least for me, a reason for me not to do that. So I went from just a beer and a, you know, occasional wine and pot guy to just a hardcore vodka, just loving drinker. I mean, I used to just love vodka. At 9 o'clock in the morning when I got up, or I just immediately started drinking and using, and I think, you know what? I'm just going to be this way. You know, there was a brief period that I was seeing a psychiatrist for twice a week for a whole entire year and all kinds of medication. And I got over some phobias, but it was much tougher to get over the alcoholism and stop drinking. So after a ton of meetings and, you know, finally reaching some a sponsor that I connect with out here in West Los Angeles, I'll have 3 years in June. And the difference this time is, we always want to say, okay, this time, this is it. I don't say that. I think the difference this time for me is that the obsession to drink actually hasn't really left. It's kind of there still. And I almost view that as a, I don't know if you want to call it a good curse, but it keeps me connected to my higher power, you know, much stronger. So much so that I actually started digging into more about what it means to have faith. And I started participating in my church, and that's what has been working. And so much so that my wife and I planted a church called Revive LA here in West LA inside a small theater. But getting back to the obsession still being there, that's why I have to stay close. I have to stay close to a sponsor when I can, to go to the meetings when I can, to my faith, my higher power, and constantly, if anything else that's important for recovery, I think a lot would agree with this. I have to constantly do stuff that doesn't have to do with me. Life is actually pretty cool. Having sobriety, having a great family, and starting a church. I think that if people really understood, for those who haven't found recovery yet, if they really knew how recovery feels, I don't think they could turn their back on it as easily. I've had more fun in recovery and in sobriety than I ever have when I was out there drinking. I really so badly want to tell you, if you only knew how great recovery is, if you only knew how cool it is to be a Christian and how everything that you would imagine, or perhaps even beyond you would imagine, you would get out of recovery and out of being a Christian. I want to tell people that so badly, but I can't, because people have these different walks, different paths, their recovery is different, and so I just have to be that shining light. I have to be that, you know, that person that's not promoting it, just being an example and just being there. I don't think I'd be where I am today in recovery if it hadn't been for my wife. You know, a lot of us have a story on what gets us to sobriety, and I think the important thing about that is like whatever gets you there, and then once you're there, you know, it's up to you to kind of do the work. But my wife used to put scripture all over the house. She used to put meeting times, meeting places all over the house. I couldn't open up my laptop without seeing a meeting time or a scripture. I couldn't go to the restroom. I couldn't shave without looking at something on the mirror. My wife was probably considered a really cute Al-Anon. When I used to come home, she used to put a pillow underneath my head and take off my shoes, you know, that sort of thing. But she knew that it was a really serious problem, and I think she was almost on the verge of leaving me. And for whatever reason, I connected to, you know, the scripture and the meeting times, all that other stuff, and just started going back to meetings. And it was so hard for me. Sometimes I had to drink before I got to the meeting just so that I could be still in my seat. And then I drink right after the meeting. And you know, after so many times of coming in and out, you know, like I said, it's so much harder to get back. You know, eventually it kicked in, and you know, I just think that my wife was, you know, a major part of that.
Joe, thank you so much for spending time with us, and thank you so much for your service. On the road to recovery, it's an important part of our recovery to share our story, our strength with other people, to inspire them to find their journey to recovery. I'm so grateful for your time. I'm grateful to have met you, and I appreciate you sharing your story with the world. On the road to recovery, I'm Michael DeLeon, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Take a